2, 1. Hi, everybody. Welcome today. It's great to have our very first interview from two sides of the globe. I get so inspired about the technology we deal with these days. Where I am, it is actually midnight. And it's 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. So welcome, Zhang. For those of you who've been following my posts during the course of today, Dr. Zhang is a professor. She received her MA and PhD in the United States and is an associate professor of public relations and social media classes. And I have been working together for, it's about a year now, about that? Yeah. About a year now, together on social media expansion. I've really enjoyed working with her, and I'm looking forward to really expanding even more. And I'm so inspired that this very first Epiphany Insight presentation is with you. So welcome,
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jenetta. And it is truly my honor to be here and to talk about something that is very personal to me and very deep in my heart. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, me too. I think we're going to create some interesting outcomes from this. And in fact, what we are going to create is that I'm mostly known for assisting people with depression and self-harming and trauma like terrorist attacks. But what a lot of people don't realize is that I also just as regularly assist people with day-to-day challenges. And today, I've spoken from time to time about her challenges. We're going to start off first, I think, in letting everybody know that you're from China, but you've lived for many, many years now in the States, and you're now temporarily on sabbatical in South Korea. Good night. I don't know where that came from. Whoops. Okay.
I wouldn't be able to do this if I were in North Korea.
Bye.
That was funny.
Anyway, so you're in South Korea. I'll get it right. So I know you mentioned to me before, and I thought what we do is start off with covering your background. I know you had a very difficult time growing up in China and being educated there. You found that education was really, really tough for you.
Yeah,
and
I can definitely share. Yes. So I'm a native Chinese, and I came to the United States in 2003 to pursue postgraduate education. And when I was in China, and I received the typical like STEM, as we call it today, STEM education. And it's mostly math, physics, and chemistry. And it's very exam-based. It's not interest-based. So we spend lots of time doing exams and memorization, and the competition was very intense. And I really when I started learning as a kid, like most children, very curious and very interested in learning. And slowly my interest in learning just sharply decreased because of the pressure and the competition and then the heavy exams. And our school hours are so long. I think from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and approaching the later stages of my high school. And it's normally lasted until 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. So I literally spent the whole day in school. And when I came back home, more exams and more homework to do. And I really lost interest in learning. And I still remember one day, it was I think the last year, maybe in middle school. And I told my mom I didn't want to go to high school. I just wanted to go to a vocational school and then be a labor worker, and I would be very happy. And my mom said, no, you have to go to college eventually. So she kind of forced me to like fill out the form that I need to go to a high school. And so fast forward to kind of like my journey in the US. And when I was in the US, I was like, wow, this is like so different than my experience in China. And in the US education, my major is in communication, and it's very interest based. And people like professors will be asking me about my interests. What are you interested? I was like, wow, it was the first time. There are definitely several challenges for me coming to the US, because I'm not used to think in terms of me, you know. I always do what other people told me to do, like what my parents told me to do, what my teachers told me to do. So when my teacher asked me, what's your interest? I didn't know. Like, and when the teacher asked me to do critical thinking, I was like, no, I don't have critical thinking. I don't know how to do critical thinking. I don't know how to be critical. So all those are really, yeah, exactly. So all those were like very hard challenges coming to the US. But like, because the US graduate school is really interest based, and I can really dive within and ask myself, what is my interest? What is my research interest? What do I want to do? So I was really quite excited and to start my master degree here, not without challenges, as I mentioned earlier. I don't know if you have more questions later, but I can definitely talk more about all those challenges I encountered.
Yeah, let's go into, as much as talking about them, the actual feelings you felt with them as well. So you got to America, to the States, to New York, and you started studying, and you're now studying in not in your mother tongue, in English, in a strange country. What happened? I know you say this was your greatest life challenge. So just expand.
There are definitely several challenges. And then the first one is in terms of course, English, because what I learned in China is mostly exam based. I didn't learn to speak. And so speaking is very hard for me coming to the US. So that's my first challenge. And the second is the educational system. Like, as I mentioned, you know, in China, when we were in a class, we didn't ask any questions. We just sit here and listen and take notes. And that's all the things we did. But in the US, you have to participate. You have to ask questions. Not to mention, I don't have any questions here. And so that's another challenge. And I think the biggest those are the challenges related to studying. And I also have to overcome lots of emotional challenge. And like for me, I never been to a foreign country by myself. And when I came to US, I was pretty young, like 23 or 22 years old, by myself. And at the time, I came in the US in 2003. The internet, everything was not as developed as today. And so staying in contact with my friends in China was not as easy as nowadays. So I was very lonely, extremely lonely. And in China, it's a very collectivist culture. Like people communal. People are very close to each other. We talk about like our weight, our wages, our struggles, what is wrong in our life. But in the US, no. People are very, like, I don't know, like it seems on the surface, everyone is super friendly. Like we only talk about the good things in our life, you know. Like I always remember this when I first came here, the first few days when people ask me, how are you? I was like, wow, is that a question? So I started to launch into this, no, I'm not doing good, blah, blah, blah. Then later I realized, wow, that's wrong. Like I shouldn't say that. So how are you? It's just a way for people to say hi to each other without truly expecting an answer. Yeah. And so all those things are very like, just like, it seems to me very surface. Everything's just on the surface level. My relationship is very shallow. I couldn't develop any deep relationship, and conversation wise, it's very shallow to me. And we just talk about the weather, everything, just everything's fine, everything's great, I'm doing great, everybody's doing great. And it's just like something is missing. I couldn't grab what is authentic, and it's just very shallow. It seems to be very superficial to me.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest part, and just emotionally really lonely and nothing to ground me.
So what did you do? Did you just or I mean, in that place of what were you feeling? Overwhelmed? What did you do? Where was?
And I think I did my master degree first, and my master degree, it was okay. When I first came to the US, I still kind of excited in a new country, like new food to try. Not to mention I gained like 20 pounds from all the cookies, all the exciting food in the US that I never had a chance to try while I was in China. So it was not that bad when I was doing my master degree. But when I started my PhD, oh my God, it was hard because the degree itself is very challenging, very challenging. It's so much harder than my master degree. And also I kind of hit my bottom after 2 years in the US. And like when I was in China, and I thought, okay, when I went to the US, my life was going to be perfect. It's the US, it's the United States after all. But when I came to the US, it was not like that. And I don't know if you have this feeling, Jenetta. It's like many times in life, and you have this big goal in your life, and you feel like once you reach that goal, your life is going to be perfect. But when you actually get there, it's not. It's like, okay, because you will see the next goal, So that's kind of where my state, And
in actual fact, I'm glad you've brought that up, because it's so much what I talk about with the Epiphany process is that we call that in my process being in a place of fantasy, because especially in the Western world, we're so attached to feeling upbeat, happy, all the positive traits. I mean, and saying everybody expects everybody to speak positively all the time. And for our new people who don't know about the Epiphany process and what it's about, basically everything we work with works within cycles. And if you study a cycle requires an equal amount of positive and negative charge. So if you're only putting all your energy, all your charge into being positive, you're pushing yourself away more and more away from centered balance and on one side of the continuum. And the more you try and be all these positive traits, and by the way, there are nearly 5,000 human traits listed in the dictionary, and approximately half of those are positive and half are negative. Now, if you're trying to be 2,500 traits, you're really polarizing yourself away from center more and more. And what happens then is your psyche knows that you're in fantasy. Your subconscious knows this. And it catapults you by default into the equal and opposite direction of center, in the other direction, into what we call nightmare. And you feel guilt and shame. When you're in fantasy, you're full of pride. I'm going to be this and that, and I'm going to get this right, and everything's going to go right, and I'm going to have the ideal home, and I'm going to meet the ideal person, and I'm going to have the ideal studies, and la, 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 la. And then you go over into the nightmare side of life in the equal and opposite direction, into feeling guilt and feeling ashamed that you haven't met the very high standards that you fantastically set yourself. So what you do is with this process is you learn some very specific skills and techniques which reverse the polarities you have created. Now, the more you try and be one side more than the other side, the more you polarize, and the more bipolar we become. And that's when we start feeling depressed, because we're either in one side of our reality in extreme positivity, or we're in the other side of our reality in extreme negativity. And usually we're roller coastering from side to side on the journey of trying to learn how to bring ourselves back into center again so that we can manage it. And when you reverse those polarities into centered manageability, then you create two half-wave cycles that look like the figure S on the line of balance. And at the top of that S, you create what we call the epiphany, the photon being light in Greek. So you have an epiphany moment and you lighten up. So that's basically where you went, is you had this fantastical idea that you were going over to the States. It was going to be like the land of milk and honey, and you were going to get it all right, and it was going to be a whole stack different from the difficult life you perceived you were experiencing at home in China. And of course, when it didn't meet that extreme expectation, you got catapulted into the equal and other side on the journey of understanding that both positive and negative are equally as important. Yeah, you can't, I mean, you look at electricity. I'm sitting here surrounded by all this light, and we all know that cycles of electricity can't operate with equal amount of positive and negative charge in it, and that if you've got more than one than the other, it elongates that cycle and distorts it. And that's what happens in our psyche. Our psyches are no different.
So why do you think we become so emotionally charged toward negative emotions? Like, to the extent that we don't want to talk about it, we deny it.
Well, it really, in the Western world, I can't speak for China, of course, but in the Western world, there has been for probably close to 100 years, this belief system came into popularity with the learned few. That you had to be more positive than negative, that negative was judged as unloved and unlovable, and that being positive was more how you should be to be accepted by society and loved and lovable. And so the more kind and loving and thoughtful and giving and gentle and all those virtuous, positive traits that you portray, and the more you eliminate any thought, word, or deed that's negative, the more socially acceptable you will be. And that was popularized in 1952 by a man that many of you will more than likely know, called Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And he wrote a book and published it in 52 called The Power of Positive Thinking. And post-World War II, where everybody had been in the nightmare of World War, and they were looking for a euphoric answer to bring them back to feeling all right about the world. So he gave it to them and said, cut out all negativity and become euphorically positive. And you can see, I mean, the very fact that I've said the more positive you try to be, the more you polarize, or the more negative, the more you polarize from the center and the more bipolar you become. So it's no surprise that more and more people are being treated for bipolarism, and our society then, especially the medical world, tries to sort it out with medication and really suppress the emotions, because that's what it is. our thoughts and emotions are distorted in that cycle. And we roller coaster. First of all, there's dissension between what we're thinking and what we're feeling. And then the more we try and be more one trait than its opposite trait, and we judge the trait that is unlovable, the more we magnetically attract in that cycle people and circumstances that portray that trait that you judge. So you're going around saying, I'm a gentle and kind person, always, which of course is impossible because we're a mixture of both that and its opposite. And because we're in denial of how lovable its opposite is, how being ungentle and unkind has as much value in a place of balance and manageability as its opposite doesn't have, and it goes both ways. And the more you try and be more one than the other, the more you will attract people and circumstances that portray that very trait or traits that you judge. So that's basically what happened there. Is you came here expecting to have it all the problems and challenges solved and to be positively okay, and you arrived in a society that reflected all the stuff that you expected yourself to be, and of course not being able to express who you are and so on. And on the journey of learning how to bring that into manageability. So what we're going to do now...
Also, just at a point, just like once in China, in our conversation, we do talk about like challenges and what's not working. But then all of a sudden, when I came to the US, when I have so many issues and problems that nobody wanted to hear and couldn't find a channel to hear, like you mentioned, is positivity. That's just
Yeah, and it must have been incredibly lonely and overwhelming. You must have found it difficult.
Where I started, especially during my PhD journey. That's how I started yoga, meditation. Yes, I was just like, what's the purpose? So I'm going to now take you into a series of questions that will enable us to expand this very powerfully. And the very first thing I'm going to ask you is, let's start at this side, because we ask these questions on both sides of the continuum. By being challenged like this when you were in the States, what skills, techniques, experience, and exposure did it push you into gaining that if you had come to the States and everything had worked out perfectly, you would have lost out on experiencing? So the first part I'm going to ask you is, who did it push you to have more faith in, or have new conversations with, that drew you closer to them? Who did you draw closer to because you were challenged in the States? Because I didn't have any friends when I just came to the US. And then,
so who did you draw closer to? Just go straight to that answer.
I think it's my yoga teacher.
Okay, so it pushed you to start yoga, as you mentioned, and you drew closer to your yoga teacher. So what, in those conversations with that yoga teacher, what skills did you learn that you wouldn't have ever have gained if you had remained in being the way you had been? What did that pain and stress bring?
Yeah, I think there are actually two people, as I think. One is my yoga teacher, who kind of opened the door of spirituality to me. I was like, okay, there's kind of a field called spirituality, and I haven't experienced much. And then lots of the deeper conversation I had was with one of my professors when I was at University of Maryland. She teaches English. She's a very spiritual leader, a teacher. So we had lots of conversations about spirituality. I really learned. I kind of learned that life, we need to have a bigger goal, like a bigger purpose. Because I was very lost. I was really miserable. I was like, is life just about studying and having publications. Like one publication, like for us in academia, publication are kind of the bread and butter, and that's what we do. So important. Everyone is like, I need to publish. I was like, is that the purpose of my life? Just having publications that not many people are reading, just for our own whatever purposes. I was very lost with that. And then when I had this really deep conversation with the teacher, yes.
So you began trusting more of what? What did you start trusting more?
I began to trust more of the spirit, so to speak, or the God, or the universe. I started to surrender myself. Not so much have myself in my journey, but like the bigger, that's beyond me, the universe. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah.
I got it. So what you're saying is that through being put under this stress and pressure, it pushed you to trust the bigger picture and let go more.
Yes, let go more. I started to meditate regularly on a daily basis. I do chanting, yoga, meditation. All those things helped me tremendously. And I brought lots of peace to my heart, and kind of see like the bigger picture, like world peace, and I'm making contribution to our society. I start to see the bigger picture that transcend myself, and which brought me lots of peace and love, and a lot happier. Yes.
Okay, so in gaining that trust with the macrocosm, with the bigger picture of things, what did it help you to do with your family? Did you start talking to them differently? Where did you draw closer, or who did you draw closer to within your family because you got this bigger picture and was
no,
more
really?
trusting?
I think my parents, they don't understand this. Like in China, most people are. Okay. So now my parents.
Okay, here's the question. I'm going to give it again because there's always a knock-on effect. I'm not saying where did you go to your parents and tell them about this. I'm saying who did you draw closer to and understand more and have deeper conversations with because of this?
No, really, nobody.
Okay, who became your family in America?
Oh, my husband.
Okay, so in fact, you mentioned that it pushed you into doing the yoga and meditation, and you met your husband at meditation.
Yes, we met each other at a meditation club. Yes.
So in other words, it took the stress and the anxiety of things not flowing for you to find and become part of the family that you and your husband have created.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and let's go. There has to be, surely in some way, there's definitely a way within your family that you're doing things differently that's working in your actual birth family. Things will have shifted. You're doing something differently that's working with them because of what you've been.
Because I don't know, maybe I think it's just hard in my family, or maybe in most Chinese families, because like it's not like in the US, children and their parents are equal partners. They have like conversations. In China, no. Like my parents are way above me. I'm like here. I don't feel like I can ever actually have a conversation with my parents. No. They always tell me to do.
Anyone else?
I'm the only child. I have a very small family. Yeah.
No cousins?
Not really. We don't talk much. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this often happens. I have a client who has 8 dogs, and that's her family. So that's who she grew closer to in her times of adversity and got animal skills, and she now is like an animal whisperer with clients herself.
That's cool. Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be blood family, but it's great to check that out. What did it push you to do with your finances differently that you had never learned to do before by having this adversity?
What do you mean finance? Like,
well, there are 7 areas life areas that we work with this process. And when you're challenged, it pushes you to take on new skills, techniques, experience, and exposure in all of those 7 areas. So I'm now walking you through those 7 areas. We've done spiritually, which is faith and trust either in yourself or someone else, or in a happening or a group of people. We've done physically, which is the yoga and the meditation, which brought you back to the spiritual side again. And also I could hear also the mental. We've done family. We haven't quite touched on social. And now I've taken you through to financial. So whenever we have a stress creating happening in our lives, we start gaining, as much as it's challenging and a lot is lost. At the same time, we gain skills and techniques and experience in each of those 7 areas. So it would have pushed you to start making decisions with your money differently and handling your money differently than you'd ever done before. What did it push you to do with your finances?
I definitely started to give more, give away more money. Yeah.
Okay. So
to
it made you
more giving, definitely, to strangers, and more caring, definitely much more giving, and then to help others, and believe that it just makes me feel good, just generally become much more giving. Yeah.
Okay, so by going through that extreme adversity of isolation and overwhelm, learning a new language, feeling as though you'd gone to another planet, I would imagine, it enabled you to gain the skills of caring and empathy and learning that money is... What did it leave you feeling doing that with your money?
I really started to pursue, to see money as like a flow of energy, and just to give more so that more can come back, to see it as energy, and not just like the money, but like more so energy. And in terms of my emotions, and I have another interesting story to share. I really felt like overall just who I am became like much more opened up, because when I was in China, I oppressed lots of my emotions. And after I came to the US and starting this journey, like spirituality, I really opened up. I learned how to cry. Like earlier, I lost that ability to cry. I really think when I was in China, I didn't even cry much. Like it's just nothing can really touch the deep side of my heart. Nothing. It was so it's so strange now as I think about it. But now I become alive again. Like, yes, that's the word, alive again. Like inside out and outside in. And now when like easy things, like when people share stories with me and touch my heart, I start to cry. Or when people like my friends share like tragic or sad things in their life, I start to cry. And like I become happy. I really become happy. When I'm sad, I'm really sad. My emotions are coming back, so which is really nice. Yeah,
that's exactly it. You've hit it on the head, and I'm so glad we've got to this part with this coming up. That is really the crux of what this is. 2 things. One is that also in the West, especially, it's a very British thing, is that to show emotions and cry shows great weakness. And yet it actually takes a lot of courage. And when you don't cry, there are toxins in our body that can only be released through tears.
Yeah.
And so if you're not crying, then those toxins are trapped. So and of course it's a great form of release of tension of thoughts and emotions. So the crying is really as valuable as all our ways of releasing from our body, whether it's through sweating or urine or whatever it is. Those are they're all vital parts of detoxing ourselves.
Yeah.
The other thing that what you've touched on then is just so very, very vital in understanding is that we try and avoid pain and pressure and stress. Again, the Western society tells us that it's really important to try and avoid that and always feel peaceful and calm and happy and upbeat, and then our lives will work. And yet, if you look at everything in our universe, or everything in our sphere of influence, has come from stress, pressure, and pain. That is the seat of creativity. You ask any artist that their most profound work has come from their moment of greatest pain.
Mm-hmm.
Greatest challenge and pain. You can't birth a baby without labor pains. And it's the same with anything. And you hit it exactly on the head there, that it took the stress, the pressure, and the pain of not being at home in the States, feeling like you were a fish out of water, and going into that place of extreme angst, extreme pain, to really open your heart and feel caring and empathy and feeling inspired and being able to cry authentically and rebirth yourself.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
And look where it's got you. So the question that we asked at the beginning, which was, what wouldn't have worked if you hadn't had that extreme time of isolation and feeling so very alone in another country with a different language? What would you have lost?
Can you see that question again? I lost you for a second.
So the question goes the other way in saying, if you hadn't had that extreme time of angst, isolation, overwhelm in a country totally on your own, with a different language, not even your mother tongue, with a really difficult PhD to study, what would you have lost if you had not had that angst and that really difficult time? What would you have been without today?
Definitely, I think myself, my new me, and like I'm so different than like who I was like before I came to the US, and definitely I wouldn't change anything, and I'm very happy for the challenges, the difficulties, the low points, the pain, and like it really pushed me to search for spirituality. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be embarking on this journey, and which means I wouldn't find my husband, and I wouldn't be where I am today. I'm very happy. Yeah. Just myself.
So it was the challenge that brought you and rebirthed you to step into the magnificence that you are embracing today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is, if I go into people with deep depression and self-harming, and even the ones who've been through trauma, especially extended trauma, people who've had very extended traumatic childhood, when they start working this in layers like an onion and start understanding that as much as what went wrong was unacceptable, it equally had acceptable virtues to it, that if they had had a different life, they would have lost out on certain skills, techniques, experience, and exposure that has stepped them into their wisdom, their genius, and who they are today. So it's not marginalizing what's not worked, but it's being able to list the equal amount of where it did work to the same degree.
Yes, yes.
And that is where it's so inspiring. And that's what I've so enjoyed working with you, over this last year, because you've understood this. And
I still remember when I was in my graduate school, I hit the lowest point. I was kind of depressed, not clinically, but I just felt depressed. And I was like, I asked myself constantly, I said, there got to be much more in life than this. There has to be more. What's the purpose? That's like the number one question in my mind. Other people are thinking about their study, but every day I wake up, I was asking myself, what's the purpose of my life? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? This shouldn't be it. There has to be more. And I remember I was so troubled by those questions. And then I started to search. I was like, let me do a yoga class first, and then starting meditation, chanting, all those things. Yeah. But you said, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. So I am so looking forward to expanding so much more with you on a social media level, as more and more people embrace and understand what this is all about. And I want to thank you for joining me on this inaugural interview.
Yeah. Thank you. See, like even talking about this, like brought out lots of emotions. I can feel it. And which is like, I never felt this way before, like the different levels of emotion, happy and sad. Like before, I can describe it as if this was someone else's feeling. But now I truly experience it. It's really good. Yeah. Being able to laugh and cry.
Yeah, and that's what I love hearing you saying, is that it's a combination of laughing and crying that opens the heart. And not just laughing.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're just laughing, then there's going to be, if you're extremely laughing, there's going to be extreme crying sometime or another. It might be weeks, months, years. After all, that is where comedians are born. You look at all comedians, they've had tragic lives. And that's what brings the laughter. On the journey of understanding that the tragedy and the laughter are one and the same, they appear separate. But they're really, when you bring the two together, the heart opens and you go into that place of going, wow, there's an insight, a lightness of being that the combination of the both brings. And that's what I'm hearing in you now. It's such an inspiration.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
Yeah, and an inspiration to see you walking your walk and talking your talk. Very perfect. I thank you for joining us this evening, and I look forward to expanding so much more with you over the weeks and months and even years to follow.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Means a lot to me. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Good night.
Night, morning.
Bye.